Beginning our Daf, Succah Daf Gimel, we begin 3 lines down at the top of the Yomim. The Gemara begins to explain the halacha of our previous Mishnah, which we spoke about making a sukkah on top of a wagon, top of a boat, top of an animal, top of a tree. She's caused by the Kazakh and the Cheskel to enter the Chem Shem joining us for today's Daf. It should be discussed for Tinik Ben Yehudas. Some of these we discussed in today's Daf are how sturdy a sukkah has to be in order to fulfill the mitzvahs. We'll see in the cases regarding making it on a boat. The use of animals as walls for a sukkah, is that valid or not? If a non-Kain's daughter married a Kain, when may she eat truma, when not? When do we say that, we don't know if her husband is still alive and that she wouldn't be able to eat? Separating truma and meiser, what's that order and the procedures? Ruach mitzui di yabasha is the concept that it's in a regular land area, this is a common wind, like a regular wind, and that's going to relate to how strong and how sturdy the sukkah has to be. Whereas Ruach she'ein mitzui di yabasha is a very uncommon wind, which is equivalent of what a nautical wind would be, and that's a stronger wind, and that would only be if you hold the sukkah has to be there's kavah. Lechia mavoi is the ways that you prepare and you fix a alleyway to go ahead and be kosher to carry over there. That's the mavoi. That's the alleyway. And the lechia is the side post. Passing the beroy is a unique halacha that we had Masechtas Eruvin, when there was those who would come up, the pilgrimages, the oile regel, they needed water for their animals, but the problem is the street is Rosh Hashanah and the well is Rosh Hashanah, so they make a special dispensation to have these L-shaped brackets around the well to be able to make it into Rosh Hashanah. Misla Shchich is the concept that mis is not a common thing, we don't have to take that into consideration. Truma Meiser is the halacha that when you have the produce, you have to separate Trumas and Meisers, and not only does the Kain have Truma, but also his wife has the ability to eat truma. Kutim is the group of the Kuthins who was brought up by the Assyrian king, and they have a questionable status regarding if they're Jewish or not, although they were Megayer. The order of the tithes is first Truma Gedaila, which is approximately 150, is given to the Kain, Maserishan, then comes the 10th, which is given to the Levi. Then, depending on the year, you either give a Meiser Sheni, which is a second type, which is what's remaining after the first one, then you give a 10th, and on the 3rd and the 60th of the Shemitah cycle, you give Meiser Ani to the poor person. So we begin the current Daf Chav Gimel, 3 lines down at the top of the Amid, where we had said in the Mishnah that whoever makes a sukkah on top of a wagon or on the top of a boat, it's going to be kosher. So our Gemara says, Mana Mastin Huditan, about Mishnah that says making a sukkah on the top of a boat is going to be kosher. So the Gemara, it's Rabbi Kiva, because actually Machlek is telling him in the Brisa. So makes his boat he makes his sukkah on the top of his boat. He says, yeah, the sukkah needs an exotic sukkah trip. He's going on a cruise and he has a sukkah. So it's machlek is a real place. So he says actually it's not valid. Rabbi Kiva Machshi says it's going to be kosher. And the Gemara actually brings an interesting story that the Brisa says Rabbi Kiva they were on a boat on Sukkah's time. Maybe they were fishing. Rabbi Kiva Rabbi Kiva when he made a boat on the top, he made a sukkah on top of the boat. The next day, a wind blew in, uprooted his whole sukkah. Where's your sukkah? You like the way Talmudic style, the way they speak, right? Right? And basically, as the Gemara is going to explain, is he's qualifying how strong and sturdy the sukkah is supposed to be. You're making a sukkah on top of a boat. Rabbi says it's not kosher. Our Mishnah, Rabbi Kiva says it is kosher. So Amabai, he qualifies the machlekes and he says, not so simple. According to everybody, if the sukkah that you're making it's so flimsy, it's not even strong enough to withstand a common regular wind that blows on dry land, everyone's going to agree like Klomi. No one's going to disagree. Even Rabbi Kiva, that's not even a dira sarai. It's not even a temporary dwelling. It's not even a dira to be arai, because a regular wind's going to knock it down. You don't need a huff and a puff, and it's not there anymore. Okay. If it could withstand even an uncommon dry land wind, which is like Rashi, it says the equivalent of a nautical wind, which is it's windier. Everyone knows you go to the beach, it gets windier. By the water on top of a boat, we have no land around, no mountains. It's even windier. So the equivalent of a regular wind by the sea is the equivalent of an uncommon dry land wind, and it could withstand that. So kulam lepligadik share. No one's going to disagree. Even we would agree that such a sukkah is going to be kosher. Meaning, even though it cannot withstand, let's say, an uncommon sea wind, which is very strong, doesn't make a difference. Even the Rimglil who holds that a sukkah has to be diris kavas, to be like a permanent structure, of course you're going to have that if it can withstand an uncommon dry land wind. So everyone's going to agree that's kosher. So keep please. What's the machlekes Rabbi Kiva and Rimglil if you could have a sukkah on top of a boat or not? It's this sukkah that you're making would be strong enough to withstand a regular wind on dry land. But it cannot withstand an uncommon dry land wind, which Rashi explains is a common sea wind. So it's much more windier on top of that on the yacht. I don't know because I haven't been there, but with the cruises and people, it's windier out there. I don't know if you light that cigarette, it's going to go out very quickly. You're going to get a good part, to light it over there. It's windier. No, it's not. It's very calm, the waters, and it's not windy. What?
Usually.
So we have not understanding the Gemara here. Maybe the Rishonim asked this question. Maybe because of climate change, global warming. Maybe that's why it's everything's changing. But it's windier there, and so that's the machlekes. Lil Sabi, he holds Sukkah Diris Kavabi, and you have to have a permanent structure. Since it cannot withstand a common sea wind, so like Klumi, so it's not significant, meaning, it would be qualified as a temporary structure, but you have, according to Lil, and we quoted him on the previous step, it has to be a permanent structure. That's not strong enough. Kiva Sabi holds no Sukkah Diris Arabi, all you have to have is a temporary structure. Since it can withstand a regular, if you had it on the street, it would be able to have a regular wind that's blowing on Sukkot time would last. Sure, it's going to be kosher. So again, really what it comes down to is that machlekes is a specific case of that it could be Yuchel Lamed Baruch Mitzui Di Abasha, but not Baruch Mitzui Di Yam. And really, it seems like it's only secondary that we're saying it's regarding a boat. It's not really intrinsically a machlekes regarding making on the boat. It's just that's where do you have the application of Baruch Mitzui Di Yam, which is really what they're disagreeing about, is on the boat. And the machlekes is, Sukkah Diris Kavah or Sukkah Diris Aroi, that's the machlekes. If you need Diris Aroi, so then it's good enough. If you need Diris Kavah, then that's not good enough. Rabbi Kiva would hold Ruch Mitzui Di Yam that it's going to be kosher, because it could last, even though it's not going to last in the Ruch Mitzui Di Yam, Akiva Hechem Sukkah, so it doesn't make a difference. I'm sold my Sukkah, you're right, it's not going to last, I'll build a new one, but it has to be Diris Aroi. It has to be strong enough that it can withstand a regular Ruch Mitzui Di Abasha. It doesn't have to last the Ruch Mitzui Di Yam. Now, we said in the Mishnah, Oyegabi Gamal. Another case that we said is kosher. If you make it on top of a camel, it's going to be kosher. I said you can't go on the Yom Tov because you're not allowed to use an animal on Shabbos or Yom Tov, but it's going to be a kosher sukkah. Here also says, who's our Mishnah going like? So Yomei, this will be on the other trip, like we said, in the Sahara Desert when we take the island. So then you can make it on top of a camel. So who is that like? Yomei, the Tanakh in the Brayso, if someone makes a sukkah on top of an animal, for example, if he puts doors on top of two horses, and that's like the floor of the sukkah, and he makes walls on top of the animals with schach. So Remeir Machshir, Rabbi Yehuda Paisel, it's actually not according to everyone. Rabbi Yehuda says it's going to be puzzle. It says, what's the reason? Why is it puzzle? What's wrong? So it's the Gemara because I'm a curly puzzle. In the bottom Chagas Sukkot the Yom Tov Sukkot you should make for yourself 7 days. What does that mean? You should make it for you 7 days. Sukkah or oil is Shema Sukkah. It's only a sukkah that's fit to be all 7 days. That's called a sukkah. Sukkah Shena Ruya L'Shiva L'Shema Sukkah. Sukkah is not fit for 7 days. Not called a sukkah. And here since the Rabbanim made exer, they not go on the animal on Yom Tiv. Comes out it's not fit for the first day. You can't call it a sukkah for 7 days if you can't go on it on Yom Tiv. For the Meir, so how could he understand why is it kosher? Hanami says not true. What do you mean? Biblically, you're allowed to go on the animal on Shabbos and Yom Tiv. It's only with Rabbanu the Gaza, but it's a rabbinic decree because you might come to rip off a branch when you're riding on the animal. So therefore, it's still considered Chagas Sukkah Shabbos Yomim. And obviously, then you get into the lumdus. So what's the machlek is if it's rabbinic? But so how could Rabbi Yehuda say that would be a problem? But still, you can't go on, so it's not fit. But Akaban, that's their machlek is in the case of making a sukkah on the animal. Now, interestingly, it's exactly the opposite regarding the next case of the opinion of the Tanoim. The case we just said before was that they're both about animals, but we were talking about that you're making the sukkah on the animal. Here, you're making the animal a doifin l'sukkah. You're making one of the walls of a sukkah, as this picture illustrates. So here's actually the opposite. The mayor in this case says paisel. He says invalid. You're missing a wall. But you the machshir says kosher. It's good. You have a third wall with the animal. Why? Show your mayor because the mayor said kol davishes b'ruchaim. Anything that's a living spirit. So you can't make it. It cannot be a wall for the sukkah. You cannot make it a side post for the mavi, which like we have that by the opening of the alleyway, as for the Erev, we have a side post. It can animal cannot function as a lechi. Neither could you make it as the boards for the wells, like we learned in Mesechus Erev of Yizayim Beis that we make special boards. They're called the yumdin. The reason they're called the yumdin is the yoy amudim. It's like a double pillar because it's like an L-shaped bracket. and it goes for the pit in Rosh Hashanah, where the pit is 10 tefachim deep, which is Rosh Hashanah, and you can't fill up unless it's surrounded with walls. So because of the animals on the other regalim, they permitted them to have these 4 diyumdin for the 4 corners. And Meir says you cannot make one of those from a living creature, which the Gemara is going to explain later on what the reason is. But neither can you make. If let's say you made a covering for a coffin of a dead person, you made an animal, that's not called goylil. What's the significance? Because there's a special halacha that says in Chulnav Ayin Beis Amud Aleph that the goylil and the doifik, which is machlekes to Rashi and Taisus, but it's like Rashi says, it's the covering of the coffin. And it itself says the tumah maga masa and oil, because it says in the pasuk panei hasada, which includes the goyil of the doifik. The animal, even though you're going to use it as a covering of the coffin, will not have halacha of the goyil to have the tumah of the goyil. And one more, in the name of Rabbi Glili, they said, Af inkation of gitei nashim. You can't write a get if a guy is upset at his wife and he's living out in the West and the Hicks and he wants to divorce his wife and he writes on the animal, he sends her the cow, he says Hareyat B'Gadeshes, and he sends her the cow. It's not going to qualify as a get to divorce his wife, which Gemara can explain also the reason for that too. Now, says the Gemara, what's the reason of Remeir that he holds that a living creature is going to be invalid? You can't have this cow as a wall for the sukkah. So Abaye Amma, it's a machlekes Amaram. Abaye Amma, he says Shemet Tamas. An animal might die young to an animal's going to fall. There's no more wall. Comes out, you're missing a wall for the sukkah. Later on, the Gemara is going to ask, okay, that explains most of the cases, but goyla was actually a leniency. You're saying that it's not considered as a cover of the coffin, that it's not a kavatuma, but you're saying it's exer like a chumrah, like a stringency. How can you make it as a kula? So there's not going to have tumas of goyla. But Abai says maybe that's going to die. Rabbi says shemetivrach. No, we're concerned that it might run away. You suddenly the animal's running away. You're missing a wall in the middle of Yom Tov. So that's the machlekes. Now, so the Gemara explains that the pill kosher by a tied elephant, where there's no concern about it's going to run away because it's tied. So Kuli Amin, everyone, meaning Abaye and Reb Zeir, they're not going to disagree. They may would hold it's going to be kosher. Why? Because the Inami Mayas, because first of all, it's tied, so it's not running away. And even if you're going to say it's going to die, it's going to fall, Yesh bin Yud. Its carcass is so big that plunks down on the ground, it's still going to take up the space of the 10 tefachim height of the machitz. So no one's going to disagree over there in the halacha of Remeir. Meaning we're trying to figure out what's the difference between the two interpretations about running away and dying. It's the same thing. Why do you need what is the case that which Tyson asks us, like, who said they're disagreeing? They're just trying to interpret the source of Remeir. But Agam something from the Gemara that there's an afkamina between them. So what's the case? Ki pligi, the machlekes is bepilsha in a kosher. An elephant that's not tied. That is, Lamanda Mashem Thomas, according to the one that says, meaning Abaya, that the concern Remeir has to say why a living creature is not valid as a wall for sukkah is because it might die. Like Hashina, we're not concerned because even if it dies, it's still going to take up a space of 10 tvachim. It's still going to be valid as a wall. Lamanda Megzir Shemitivah, but according to the one that says that we're concerned they might run away, Hashina, it's not tied down. The elephant might just run away. Said the Gemara, wait, that's not a good interpretation. Because the man of even according to the one that says that we're concerned they might die, and you're saying that there's no concern over here because in the case of the elephant's so big, nothing's going to happen, it's still going to be a wall. Why is Abaye not concerned in Remeir that it might run away? And that itself should be a reason to be plausible. He's not going to, the animal's just going to walk away. Ella rather says, you're right. No, the case, Bepilshe and Kashi, right. When you have an elephant that's not tied, no one's going to disagree. Even Abaye would agree that's going to be possible because the animal might run away. It's not tied down. Keep leaking. When do they disagree? Behema kashura is by a tied behema, meaning like a cow, like we have here in the picture over here, not an elephant, a tied animal. What's the machlekes? Laman the exertion according to Abaye says that the concern that Remeir had why it's not valid as a wall for an animal is because the animal might die. So Kashim will return. The cow is not as big as an elephant. If a cow dies, it's not going to be a 10 tefachim height. So therefore, it would be possible, and that's what he's concerned for. The man of according to one that says the concern is maybe that the animal is going to run away, they're not concerned because it's tied. And if it's tied, there's no concern about running away. So exactly in this case that we're showing over here, that if the animal is tied up, there's no Shema Tivrach, but there would be concern about Shema Tamas. Problem is, says the Gemara, according to one that says that we're concerned about it might run away, Shema Tamas. What do you mean? Why isn't he concerned for his opinion? You're right, it's not going to run away because it's tied, but if it dies, then it's not going to be 10 tefachim. Says the Gemara, but miso leishchicha. No, that Amoyer would say, he's not concerned for what Abaye says, because death is not common. And even Remeir would not invalidate because we're concerned that maybe he's going to die, things don't just expire. We don't have to be concerned for that. But then the Gemara says, okay, fine. That's why you're saying, according to that Moira, Remei would say it's kosher. But But you have the space between the legs of the animal, which is a breach. And even if the animal's alive, how's it going to be valid as a mechitza? Oh, says the Gemara, the ovidle that they make, as we show here in the picture over here, a wall between its feet, bahutza, with the palm fronds, lulav branches, vidafna, and these are the branches of a wood that's called laurel, and it has a fruit called bay, that we go fill it up, and therefore it's going to be a valid wall. What? Say good achas with the animal. I don't know, because it has to be like a certain dimension or shape or mechitza or. Yeah. Well, it's a good question. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Maybe you would say that by an animal, because if we're going to say such things like that, ruach hayim, whatever. Yeah. So the Gemara says the dimud rava. The Gemara says, okay, but maybe it's going to lay down, and if it lays down, so you're going to be missing your wall. Oh, says the Gemara, no, the mesicha b'ashlam alel. Like we have over here the picture that they tied and held it up from above. So it's not concerned about it's going to lay down. They tie it with ropes from the top. So then the Gemara says, wait a second, even according to the one that says that the concern is maybe the animal's going to die, so you're telling me that according to him, it would be possible, because it might die, but what do you mean? You just told me that to explain the Mandam Hashem Tivrach, you said that for him it's not a concern because it's tied, I'm not concerned it's going to lay down because he's tied up from above. So I don't understand. So even if the animal dies, it's not going to fall. So how can you tell me? You told me what's the case of the machlekes of Bidamaram and explaining to Meir who says that an animal is puzzle because we're concerned of something, and the machlekes was what are we concerned about? Either that it's going to die or that's going to run away. You told me the case that they're concerned about is behema that's tied. Why? Behema that's tied. We're not concerned it's going to run away because it's tied. But we're concerned it's going to die. And if it's going to die, it's not going to be taken up 10 tefachim more. That's going to be the difference between Abaya and Reb Zera in their interpretation of Meir. But you just told me that to explain Reb Zera, it has to be tied from above, because that'll prevent it from laying down. But then if you're tying from above, so what are you concerned if Shem Tammuz? If it's going to die, who cares? It's still staying where it is. So the Gemara, no. Zimnan, the Gemara says an interesting answer. Zimnan, at times, the height of the animal will only be 7 tefachim and a little bit more. Now, the sukkah is 10 tefachim high, but the animal is 7 and a little bit. But the mukim b'pachim l'shleish zom zechach, you're going to put the animal within 3 tefachim from the schach, so you'll say lavud, so it'll be considered as 10 tefachim as a continuum base. But v'kiven demaisa, but once the animal dies, kapza, it shrivels up a little bit, because now it doesn't have moisture inside of it anymore. Then you can have a gap of 3 tefachim, because it's getting a little bit less, and you're going to lose lavud, and there's no more wall. But the problem is, the person's not going to pay attention, not going to realize this, and therefore, Remeir, according to this Amayra, says it's going to be possible if you have the concern of Shema Yamus, because if it dies, it's going to be a little bit less, and it's not going to have love it anymore, it's not going to have a wall. Because Mandam Shema Tivrach, I'm not concerned, it's not running away. And he's not concerned with Shema Tammuz. That's the case of the difference between Abai and Reb Zera. In the difference of Meir, why is a living creature not valid as a wall for a sukkah? That concludes interpreting the Machlekes Amuram. But now the Gemara says, on one of them, did Abai really say that Remei, or according to Remei, Chayshel Misa? Remember, Remei had said the reason why an animal is not valid to be used as a wall for the sukkah is because we're concerned that the animal is going to die. And we're going to die, so we just described the case. What's going to be the difference? It's not going to be a wall because it's going to be less than love. So it must have said, did Abai really say this? That Remei is concerned for death? I mean, like we have to be chayshish that someone or something's going to die? And Rabbi Yehuda Loicha, Rabbi Yehuda is not concerned? Because according to Rabbi Yehuda, we're not concerned. Rabbi Yehuda says that a living creature is valid. And according to Abai, that's a machlek is about if we're concerned it's going to die or not. Oh, so I'm saying even if but now the Gemara is going to say, but no. Then the Mishnah says Gittin that seems to contradict what we're saying. The Mishnah says like this: Basi Soshanis is Lakai. We have a Jewish woman that's not a kohenes, that's married to a kohen. The husband goes overseas. Now, but some people have to go to work. Has to go overseas. Has to go very far, or maybe he's going on vacation. Who knows? She could continue eating truma with the assumption that he's still alive, and as a Eishes Kain, I mean, if he dies, she can't eat anymore. But she could presume that he's still alive and continue eating. The problem is, we had asked a contradiction on this Mishnah from a Brisa, which let's say a husband is afraid that he doesn't want to just drop dead. or let's say in another city, and his wife's going to have chalitza because they don't have any children, and she's going to have from his brother, which our brother-in-laws, forget about it. So he gives her a get when he's healthy, and he tells her like this. He says, Hariza Gitach, this get will be your divorce document to divorce you. Let's avoid this whole problem. What do you have to deal with my brother? He's terrible, whatever. He's not going to do chalitza or whatever until you have it. It's not worth it. A moment before I die, this will be your get. So then the halacha is asur lach b'truma miyad. Right away, the moment he does this, that he gives this conditional get, she's not allowed to eat truma anymore. If he's a kohen and she's a Israelis. Why? Because this might be the moment before he dies. And then she's divorced from him. We don't know. He might drop dead and people have a heart attack. Boom, plop. And this might be now the moment before. We don't know. Anytime it's always a suffix. You might not be you might be divorced right now because it's taking effect the moment before. But one thing we see is that from this price, that Mises common, we have to be concerned for it. We have to be concerned that this is the moment before where the guy's going to suddenly drop dead. Yeah, obviously see. So that contradicts the Mishnah. Mishnah says, we're not concerned. Oh, he's overseas. Who knows? I haven't seen him or heard him he WhatsApped me like 3 weeks ago. I haven't heard from him, whatever. You could continue eating truma. And here, this price says that no, the moment you can't eat any more truma. Why? Because he might drop dead now? It might be the sha'achas? Yeah, you have to be concerned. So we chayshim misa. And Abaye, this is the point, Abaye, right? We had said Abaye. And Abaye said, Loikash not typical. Why? How the Mishnah said is getting is Remeir, to Loikayshim misa, who he's not concerned for death. And therefore, that's the Mishnah getting that says that, oh, you can continue eating even though he went overseas. How the Bryce is Rabbi Yehuda, the Chayshim misa, who's concerned for death. Well, now, why would he say that? Why would he say Remeir is the one who is not Chayish Misa, and Yehuda is the one who is Chayish Misa, because the time he learned the Brisa. So this is getting a little bit more complicated as we go on. What's the difference? Because the Brisa says, if someone buys wine from amongst the Kufim, as Rashi points out, the place discusses it must be before they made a Gezerah, because as the Gemara says, they ended up saying that we now let them drink their wine, just like the wine, the Yain Nesach, from the Gentiles, but before they made a Gezerah, you're allowed to buy wine from the Kufims. Problem is, we don't know if they took off the Trumas Amaisus. And to the contrary, Tosfos says we know definitively it's like Tevel. So the person who bought the wine from the Gafim, he says, Shnei Lugin Shani Asala Hafish. He says, look, there's 2 Lugin out of the 100 that I have to separate for Truma. Because Truma is usually 1 out of 50. So from out of the 100, I have to separate 2. Harehin Truma. The inside over here, I'm designating the shame of Truma. So Rashi explains what's the case. Why didn't they just separate the 2 parts out of the 100 for Truma? Because it's Mamash Shabbos. It's like Tosfos explains by Ben Hashmashas. Or let's say he has no tar vessels to separate Trumas and Meissen, would you have to make sure they stay tar? Now, why do we pick specifically the Kufins? So Rashi explains because they're actually more inferior than Amaratzim. If someone buys from a Kufi, he has to definitively take Meiser, and it's not like Demai. So and moreover is that by Amaretz, they took up Truma. By Kufi, it's like definitive Temel that you even have to separate Truma. Right? When you buy Amaretz, you don't have to separate Truma, you only have to separate the Meisers. So be that as may, he doesn't have time to be mafresh the Truma, but he says the 2 parts of Truma are inside over here. Then Asara, then there's 10 parts afterwards, that's going to be Meiser Rishon. Then Tisha, then out of the 90 that's left, 9 parts will be Meiser Sheni. Umeichel, which Rashi translates, Tosfos disagrees, but he deconsecrates the Meiser Sheni, which it could be Machal, and because there's a unique halacha Meiser Sheni, you don't have to take up the second type to Yerushalayim, you can deconsecrate onto funds, you can bring the funds up to Yerushalayim. So he's Machal it, because that's something you can fix right now, because it's just by making an oral declaration that the money you have in your house should be deconsecrating the Meiser Sheni that you have in over here, and then you can drink right away. And what does that mean? How can you drink right away? What says you have Trumas and Meises inside, you never separated. You can rely on Breira, which is when you come back home, then you'll ultimately, after you drink, you'll separate it. And we'll say, retroactively, this is verified that these are the Meises and Trumas that you had designated that were in here, that I left over on the bottom of the barrel. That was the Trumas and the Meises. That's the Remei. Continue on top of the Dalman Rabbi Shimon Oisrin, they say that no, it's forbidden to do what you're describing. And they say, because we're concerned that the flask might burst. If you're going to end up drinking from it, and then before you get home, the thing bursts, that whole flask of wine, everything spilled out, you're never going to come to retroactive verification, because you never ended up separating the Trumas and Meises. Comes that you drank heavily, you drank unsigned produce. But one thing we see is that Rabbi Yehuda is concerned for the flask bursting. And like Rashi says, Kol Shkein, for the death of a person, which is it's the same concept of something just plotzing, right? And Reb Meir is not concerned. So that's why Abaye said, oh, you asking contradiction from a Mishnah that is getting on the Brisa. Are we concerned the husband's going to die or not? Oh, so everybody, don't worry. The one that says we're not concerned, that's like a mayor who's not chayish hamisa, not chayish that the flask is going to burst. Yeah, you could do it. The one who says that we are concerned that the husband's going to die, and therefore he says, if he says, you can't, you have to stop eating right away. That's like a who's concerned for the flask bursting. But one thing says the Gemara, that contradicts what Abaye just said in our Gemara. Don't get confused, there was like a few different sources we quoted. There was a contradiction that we had brought from somewhere else, that Abaye was resolving that contradiction, and he was pointing out that Meir is loy chayish lamisa, and Rabbi Yehuda is chayish lamisa. Problem is, Abaye in our sugya said that Meir is chayish lamisa, and that's his whole interpretation of why you can't use a living creature as a wall. So, is Meir chayish lamisa, or is he not chayish lamisa? So the Gemara answers, you're right, Epoch, that you have to go ahead and switch around. In other words, Abaye didn't answer like you said. Rather, Abaye answered the opposite, and he had said, "Remeir chayish lamisa," like he said in our sugya. Remeir said that Abaye said Remeir is concerned for death, and that's why you can't use an animal as a wool. And Rabbi Yehuda loy chayish lamisa. Rabbi Yehuda is not concerned for death. And as Rashi points out, that Abaye did not answer the contradiction of the Mishnah that is given in the Brisa from, as we had previously quoted from this Brisa of whoever buys wine from a kufi, to resolve the contradiction that way. No, it's not true. He actually was resolving the contradiction from our sugya, of the sukkah. That what do you see from the sukkah? That Yehuda is not concerned with the animal dying, and Reb Meir is concerned with the animal dying. And he actually resolved the contradiction the opposite. And that he was saying that the Mishnah Masechet is given actually like Rabbi Yehuda, who's not concerned, and the Brisa that says Harisa Gitav Shachar Skayt Mesaz that is concerned with the husband dying is Reb Meir. The time like learn the Brisa. Asab labehema day from the sukkah, which is our sukkah that we had discussed. If someone makes an animal as a wolf for the sukkah, Meir Paisel, Rabbi Yehuda Kamacha, Rabbi Meir says Paisel, and Rabbi Yehuda says that it is kosher. And from there you see Rabbi Meir is chayish lamisa, and therefore he's the brisa, and Rabbi Yehuda is the one who says kosher, and he's not concerned, and therefore he says that it's going to be valid. He's the Tanna Mishnah Masechet, which, as we're going to continue in the next daf, then we have the difficulty of, but wait a second, what do you do with the Brisa? As the first version we had said, the Brisa seems to indicate that the Meir is not concerned for a flask bursting, which is the same as death. The Rebbe is concerned. That's going to be the discussion of the next daf. Thank you for any time for hosting us.